We good?
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to get started. Good evening and welcome to the 2018 Village of Larchmont debates. My name is Alice Pernick. I'm co-president of the League of Women Voters of Larchmont and Mamaroneck. Our mission at the League of Women Voters is to empower voters and defend democracy. The League of Women Voters is nonpartisan and neither supports nor opposes any of the candidates you will hear from tonight. For the first time in many years, Larchmont is having a contested election for the Board of Trustees. And it's really crucial that Larchmont residents pay attention, get educated, and vote. Because real change comes not from the top down, but from the bottom up. And I think we've really seen that in the last 2 years on the national level. There's been a lot of discussion of that. I think a great example of that is gay marriage, and whether you're for it or against it, it didn't come from Congress, it didn't come from the top down. It came from places like Burlington, Vermont, so, you know, a little small place like Burlington with their civil unions, and then it went on to Provincetown, Massachusetts, and progressed from there to other small municipalities, cities, states, and now it's the law of the nation. So I think that's a really, it's a great example of how powerful and important local politics can be, and that's an example of the late Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, famously said, all politics is local. It really is. So maybe the next big change in our country will come right here locally from Larchmont. Who knows, right? So everybody, you know, I'm sure everybody here is going to come out and vote, but, you know, encourage your neighbors and, you know, everybody you know, and let them know what's going on. So now we're going to turn our attention to tonight's debate. First up, we're going to have a Q&A session with our incumbent candidate for mayor, Lorraine Walsh, who is running unopposed. Her questions are going to come from the League of Women Voters. And following that, in our debate featuring the 3 candidates for the 2 trustee positions, the first 2 or 3 questions will come from the League of Women Voters, and after that, the candidates will answer audience questions. So I'm blown away by how many questions you all submitted. I don't think in all the years I've been doing these debates, I've ever seen that many audience questions. And we're not going to have time to answer everybody's questions, but a lot of people, their questions were on the same topic. So what we do in that situation is we just sort of consolidate them, and we pick out, you know, the one that we think, you know, is the best phrased question, and we'll use that to represent all the questions on that topic. So I'm sorry if you don't hear your particular question, but hopefully we'll have covered your topic. So Election Day this year is going to be Tuesday, March 20th. The polls are open from 7 a.m. until 9 p.m. at the Larchmont Village Center, which is 119 Larchmont Avenue, behind the library. And with this decision to make, these debates are provided by the League as a vital public service. And when you join our local league, you are also a member of the county, state, and national leagues. You're supporting our demands to make voting easier and more convenient for all voters. You're supporting our demands for strong ethics reform to remove big money from politics. And you're supporting our voter registration efforts and education. So we would love for you to become a member. But more so, we would really love for you to become an active participant in our local league. And even if you just have a few hours, we have jobs large and small. We'd love to have you. And even though our name reflects our roots in the women's suffrage movement, we really welcome any and all genders. So you can find us online. We're at lwvlm.org. You can find us on Facebook, or you can speak with us tonight. So please, we hope you'll join us. Before we begin, I want to announce that on Friday, April 13th at noon, we will be hosting our annual luncheon at the Oriented Beach Club, and our speaker will be County Executive George Latimer. He's going to be speaking on the first 100 days. So please go to our website if you're interested in purchasing tickets. And also, I want to thank LMC-TV for their live broadcast, which they will rebroadcast in the days leading up to the election. Also, the Village of Larchmont for the use of their courtroom. And thank you to Penny Oberg, who is going to be our timekeeper this evening. And finally, I want to extend our welcome and our thanks to tonight's moderator, who is Deb Morell, over here. Ms. Morell is a board member, a past president of the League of Women Voters of Scarsdale. She's an active member of the League of Women Voters of Westchester as well. And we're pleased to have her here tonight, and I'm going to turn the debates over to Ms. Morell now.
Thank you. Is that good? Can everybody hear me? Okay. Good evening, and thank you all for being here. First thing, better? Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Got it. Okay. First off, I'd like to ask everybody to please silence or turn off your cell phones, courtesy to our candidates and to your fellow audience members. The League of Women Voters owns this forum, and only those permitted by the League may record this evening's proceedings. Authorized recorders must air the forum in its entirety, according to FCC requirements that a debate must not be edited and must be broadcast in its entirety, either live or reasonably soon after it takes place. Unauthorized video or audio recordings of all or any portion of this forum are not permitted. If an unauthorized person is observed to be recording during the forum, I will pause the forum and ask the person to stop. I will not resume until the person stops recording. I will terminate the forum if the person will not stop or leave. This evening's forum will have two segments. First, we'll have the candidate for Village of Larchmont Mayor, and second, we'll have the candidates for Village of Larchmont Trustees. Each candidate for office will have the opportunity to make a 1.5-minute opening statement. In the second segment of the forum, where we have more than one candidate, the order of speaking has been predetermined by drawing lots. I will read all the questions. For the candidate for Village of Larchmont Mayor, the League will provide the questions, and for the candidates for Village of Larchmont Trustees, the League will provide the first 2 or 3 questions, and after the League questions, I will read written questions for the candidates submitted by you, the members of the audience, and I will also ask the questioner to confirm his or her presence. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question, and at the end of the question and answer period, each of the candidates for trustee may make a 1.5-minute closing statement. These are the rules for the questions. Questions must address issues, not personalities. Questions containing personal attacks on any candidate will not be read. Questions, please, must be legibly written. On the questionnaire form, which will be submitted to a League representative, the writer of the question should provide his or her name and address and indicate to whom the question is addressed. Questions should not exceed 30 minutes in length. 30 seconds, sorry about that. 30 seconds in length. Before reading the question, as I said, I will ask the questioner to confirm his or her presence. You must be present at the time your question is asked. Questions may be directed to a specific candidate or to all candidates, but all candidates will have the opportunity to respond to each question. The League will avoid redundant questions and reserves the right to combine audience questions that are the same or similar. There will be no opportunity for rebuttal, but candidates for Village of Larchmont Trustees may include rebuttal commentary in their closing statements. And finally, I ask that you please hold any applause until the end of each segment of the forum. So, with that, I welcome Lorraine Walsh, and you have 1.5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. First, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for organizing this candidates forum for us this evening. It's my pleasure to be running for a second term as Larchmont's mayor. The past 2 years have been very busy. As you can imagine, running a municipality is a very complex task. The mayor and board must handle a wide range of intricate issues simultaneously and work together to achieve outcomes that benefit the long-term health of our village. Over my first term, we worked with the community to craft and pass 17 new zoning regulations, created a business district revitalization approach, and have seen the vacancy rate reduced from 12% to 7%, and completed major capital improvements to our water delivery system, including a new tank, pump station, remotely read meters, and a management and billing system, which has freed up manpower for increased maintenance and repairs. We have overhauled the village's financial software and made improvements to process that increase the efficiency of our accounts department. We have increased recreational and community events, created a pocket park, built the first bike lanes, and welcomed everyone to Larchmont on the Chatsworth Bridge. My board and I work very well together. I look forward to having the opportunity to serve another 2 years as mayor and to work with my trustees on the many issues that still need our attention.
Thank you. Okay, so now we'll have the first lead question for the mayoral candidate. What have we learned from the recent storms, and what can we do better?
Number one, we've learned that Con Ed does not have the adequate manpower staffed in Westchester County to respond quickly to an emergency like we just had with the nor'easter. After a couple of days, the response that we had in Larchmont with our Con Ed liaison and him working with our DPW and our administrator and other staff here was actually very effective. And that made a big difference in this community. I think part of one of the things we learned from that experience is that sometimes having a small village with, our own police department, our own fire department, a small DPW here is really a benefit, and it shows under those circumstances. We were able to go out and have our fire department pump out basements, the police go and take care of emergencies, check on people who've registered with issues, and our DPW followed around every Con Ed crew that we managed to get into the village to clear up the trees, to help them with the wires and get power restored in our village a lot faster than some of the other communities that were hit just as hard.
Thank you.
I could go on, but...
The second lead question is, what is being done in the village of Larchmont to answer the public's concerns about development?
Okay. The first thing I want to say is that I don't think that the issue of development, or as it's been often phrased, overdevelopment, is an incredibly large issue in Larchmont. Since 2000, we've had 6 lots created by subdivision, 3 on Vanderburg, 1 on Larchmont Avenue, 1 on Palmer, and 1 on Magnolia. The 3 lots on Vanderburg haven't yet been built. They haven't, they're just going to be starting soon. However, I understand that there's a lot of concern in the community on this issue. And so we did do a moratorium, and we looked at our zoning, and we made changes that we thought would address most of the stressors and the ability of people to overbuild or subdivide or change the topography of their land or add to the stormwater runoff in the village. But we have to realize that not all development is a negative. The village needs more tax base, especially in the downtown area, where a lot of our properties have had grievances and have had their taxes reduced. We need to be looking at that as a way to increase the tax base so that we can reduce the individual taxes for all of the property owners in the village.
Thank you. The last lead question is, in light of changes in federal tax law and the ongoing tax cap, what do you see for Larchmont's budget?
Well, we have certain costs in our budget, which are all related mostly to personnel. That's the most expensive portion of our budget, that have been rising at rates much higher than the inflation rate. Health insurance has risen 8.5% and 9.6% over the last 2 years. Pension costs 5.5% and 5.3% also. So we have a couple of options. We have lots of ways to look at this. There are things we can do to potentially reduce personnel, and that's one sure way of cutting down our expenses. But that often means a reduction in services. And most of our residents want to expect a certain level of services. So we also look for ways that we can cost share with other communities. We often partner with the town of Mamaroneck. We look for ways that we can make our departments function more efficiently. Some of the things I mentioned in my opening have led to that efficiency. We're looking for non-tax revenue sources. We've rewritten our filming code this year to incentivize filming companies to do some investment in the community. We've already brought in $12,000 just this year in filming fees, non-tax revenue. We are looking at parking in the village as an asset to help support the village budget and also to help finance needed improvements to the lots and signage. So it's cost sharing. Minute and a half after, thank you. Cost sharing where we can find it. Changes to services that are not going to be disruptive, but that will save money for residents. Looking for ways to make our departments function more efficiently, perhaps with fewer personnel. And we're also looking for lots of new ways to bring in new non-tax revenue.
Thank you. And that's it, right? Okay. So,
Okay, thank you.
do you want me to shift over? But you want, okay. I hate to be in the middle of them, yeah. Okay.
Just wanted to show you what we've done with the questions.
So we're going to have the candidates for trustee come and join us up here.
What we did is, this is only plus items.
Do you want us sitting in our order of our picks, or do you care?
Oh,
Okay, so.
maybe that's easier for...
No, I would read it
Okay.
out first.
to keep track of all you. I don't know who's number one. Okay, so maybe you want to sit over here?
Okay.
Oh, okay.
No, one over, scoot over.
One over?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bubba, I'm gonna take the higher chair.
And are you two or?
I'm 3,
You're three.
but I'm shorter.
Okay, yeah, you're right, so we'll switch too.
Can I sit there? Sure. Well, let's see.
Okay, does this chair go up at all?
Do I look too low?
Carol, can I just
What it is? Thank you.
Significant percentage increase. What's the matter? Mortgage. Mortgage recovery. Punishing. It's punishing. And then we put them in order.
Okay.
That's good. Look good there.
Used to put those tax dollars. Wires? Okay.
Thank you. Let me extend that chin. Let me extend that chin.
Stick the chin after the read.
Yep.
Hello, darling.
Okay. Good. All right, great.
And there's one closest to you.
Beautiful. One goes to me. Okay.
Good job, by the way. Nice job.
Awesome. So Alice, I'm sorry. So the league questions are just interspersed. The league questions are just interspersed, right?
Yeah, usually I say they're going to be the first.
That's okay. They're interspersed. It's all right. I'm just gonna. Okay. Beautiful. Okay. Okay. All right. So. Okay. So we will start with the second half of our forum. Welcome to the candidates for Village of Larchmont trustee. I will introduce them going closest. This is Sarah Bauer for the Preservation Party. Peter Finelli from the Democratic Party, and Carol Miller from the Democratic Party. We drew lots before the forum started, and actually, it worked out nicely, because we're going to go 1, 2, 3. That's also the order in which they'll do their closing statements, and then in the middle with the questions, we'll be rotating the order. So, Ms. Bauer, you have 1.5 minutes to give your opening statement.
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women Voters and all of you participating this evening. I'm here because I believe in Larchmont and in our community of smart, energetic, and caring neighbors. But I also believe that our village is facing some tough issues. It is time for us to get more involved and for me to advocate for the community that I love. Almost 3 years ago, I became one of the founders of Preserve Larchmont and have spent the last few years working with the residents and local officials to update our land use laws. I believe in our right as resident homeowners to renovate or even demolish as needed, but we also need to be tough with for-profit developers who seek to profit at our community's expense. We need a reasonable balance. Overdevelopment doesn't just impact one street, it has a major impact on our community's most valuable asset, our schools. Like so many Larchmonters, my husband and I chose Larchmont more than 15 years ago for its many charming qualities, but most of all, the neighborhood schools. We have a daughter at Hummocks and a son at Chatsworth. And yet we are now discussing busing, mobile classrooms, increased class sizes, and redistricting. Subdivisions and McMansions have left few downsizing options for empty nesters and are adding population to our schools. And all of this is happening at a time when taxes are rising. And the new federal tax law will make the cost of living in Larchmont even higher. As a tax attorney, I will take a hard look at the village budget. And to take on these challenges, the status quo must change. At present, there is no member of the village board who has children in the school system, or for that matter, is a tax attorney. If you elect me, I will bring a point of view that is currently missing. 30 seconds is, or minute 30 is not a lot of time.
Thank you. Mr. Finelli?
Before you start the clock, I would just like everybody to say good evening, and can we all say good evening to each other? Good evening, everyone. I'd also, we didn't start this at the top. I would like everybody to stand and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh.
Yes, that's what happens. Sorry.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. My name is Peter Finelli. The Finelli family came to Larchmont in 1923. I'm a graduate of Chatsworth, Hummocks, and a class of 1977 from Amerenik High School. That is where I picked up the nickname Bubba. And yes, I'm 58 years old. I have a BFA from Theater Arts Conservatory at SUNY Purchase in Theatrical Lighting Design and Stage Technology. I'm the proud owner of United Stage Associates, a full-service production company specializing in special events for Fortune 500 companies. I'm married to the love of my life, Teresa. We have 3 great children, Michelle, 26, Peter, 24, and Gianna, 20. I've been on the Larchmont Board of Trustees since late 2011. I'm running for my 4th term as a village trustee. My platform has always been, since 2012, let's keep Larchmont, Larchmont. I love this village and will continue to protect it as best I can. I will build upon quality of life issues involving our seniors, children, parks and playgrounds, protect our environment and our waterways, and make sure that we stay Tree City, USA. Allow me to continue working on our infrastructure, our 23 miles of roadways, our 24 miles of sidewalks, and our 42 miles of curbing, as well as our 48.5 miles of underground water and sewage pipes. That's a lot of infrastructure for a village 1 square mile. As we move forward, it is important to take care of the village that we love for the next generation to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting and to LMC for televising this event. There are many pressing issues facing Larchmont today, including, as the mayor has mentioned, finding new sources of revenue to reduce the tax burden on our residents, dealing with an aging infrastructure, and revitalizing our business districts. Governing responsibly means addressing multiple issues like this facing the village at any one time, not just dealing with one matter to the exclusion of others. I ran for the board 2 years ago, not because I had a personal agenda or an interest in a particular project, but because I wanted to continue giving back to the village, and I felt ready then to take on the challenges of serving as trustee. My first 2 years on the board have been busy. In addition to our general responsibilities, each trustee serves as liaison to various other volunteer boards and commissions. My responsibilities have included acting as liaison to the Planning Board, the Library Board, the Recreation Committee, and as Taxi Commissioner. I have focused particularly on enhancing the recreational opportunities for our residents and getting the most out of our Flint Park facilities. Working with the Recreation Committee, I helped to get our bike lane pilot project implemented, which we now plan to expand. We've also brought back the Tour de Larchmont, spring and summer tennis clinics in Flint Park for adults and children, social events at the Playhouse, and clinics at our paddle tennis courts. These are some of the things that help build the sense of community that make Larchmont so special. Serving as a trustee has been a fascinating and challenging experience that has exposed me to all aspects of village government. I hope to be able to build on the incredible amount I've learned about the village's operations over the last 2 years and continue to work with Mayor Walsh and the rest of the board. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. So we'll go to our first questions, and actually we have league questions interspersed with audience questions. The first question is from Kate Biello. Okay, great. And so this question will go first to Mr. Finelli. There have been significant percentage increases in our village budget for the last several years. Now, the new federal tax code's limits on mortgage interest deductions is further punishing our already overburdened residents. A, what positive steps would you take to bring the budget down and keep Larchmont affordable? And B, what would you cut?
Well, it's difficult to cut any of the services because the residents know and love all of the services that we provide, and we pride ourselves quite a bit on the services that we do provide. 86.4% of the budget is already spent. That goes to your police, your DPW, your fire. So that leaves 14.6% for additional items, fixing up the roads, recreation, a variety of things, pipes and so on. So you really can't cut a lot of the budget. A lot of the money that comes, that's allocated is from Albany. We can't really change that. It's just, it's a difficult question and one that has to be, obviously worked at, but the budget is what it is, and it's mandated from Albany. So it's a challenge to try and adjust that, and that's what I have to say on that. Thank you.
Ms. Miller?
Trustee Finelli is right that the budget it's a tough challenge, particularly in a village this size with its own police department and fire departments and so large personnel costs. So as the mayor mentioned, though, one of the things this board has been working on diligently is looking for ways to increase the non-tax revenue. Obviously, there are opportunities in the business district that we are working to pursue, and we hope to see some come to fruition in the near future. The film law is another example of taking advantage of the village assets in a way that we hadn't really taken advantage of before by getting revenue from film companies that really would like to come here. Maximizing use of village facilities is another way that we're trying to increase revenue. We're using and renting out the village center more. We're thinking about and talking about and trying to use the Playhouse more for other kinds of events. We're also, as the mayor mentioned, we have commissioned an extensive parking study, and we hope that the recommendations of the consultant that's doing the parking study will help us figure out ways to maximize revenue from parking in the downtown. Those are some of the key ways we are looking at now to maximize revenue. Other ways that we have to look at to deal with the village budget challenges are look at different ways of cost sharing and sharing of services. And we know that there are more opportunities out there, and that's something we're going to have to focus on over the next 2 years.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer?
I absolutely agree that we have to look at alternative sources of revenue, and I think that those have been covered fairly well, but I think another thing that we need to look at are some of the inefficiencies in our budget. For example, our aging infrastructure, a lot of the money with respect to our water department, we are losing significant revenue or funds in terms of leaks through the system. We need to look at the expenses, and we need to look at the inefficiencies within our systems and try to correct that as quickly as possible so that we are not wasting money.
Thank you. The next question is kind of a compilation of several questions, a league question and then questions asked by Kim Tafali, Sally Roebling, Gwen Schufro, Ian Post, and Millie McGraw. So everybody's here, right? Okay. What is your position on development in Larchmont Village? Specifically, are our current laws sufficient, and can you explain in specific terms how new development has impacted school enrollment numbers? And we will start with Ms. Miller.
Well, that's a large question. First, I'd like to say, if the first part of the question was, how do I feel about development? What I feel about development is that I'm neither pro-development or anti-development. I am for responsible regulation of development. Development is not a dirty word. Let's go back, so there are places, as the mayor mentioned, and as I talked about before, where development in the business district could be extremely beneficial for us. Let's talk a little bit about specifics about development in the past several years and how it's impacted the school system. So, as we've looked back at the numbers, we see that rather than massive overdevelopment, what we've had since about 2010 is a net of 2 houses in the village from what there was before. We also have an affordable housing project that was built as part of a settlement of a federal lawsuit with Westchester County. Our understanding from district statistics is that 19 children enrolled in 2016 to the district from that project. So we have 2 houses and the housing development. Those are the children that have contributed to the 19 children are ones that are enrolled in Chatsworth. So that's what has impacted the local elementary school and maybe a handful who have gone on to the Homics and the high school. I agree with the mayor. I don't think this constitutes massive overdevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer?
I think we actually have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, because what started this was a change in the tax policy, an increase in the tax rates, and many of our empty nesters have left the village. As a result, at the same time that this was going on, developers came in and started taking down not just subdivisions, but taking down smaller, modest single-family homes and replacing them with much larger, much more expensive homes. So we've also taken away now alternatives for empty nesters who were looking to downsize. This further increased the number of younger families moving into the village. So that is also putting pressure on the schools. It needs to be, we need to look at the bigger picture. We need to look at all of the different policies working together and not just houses going up here or a house coming down there. We have to think through the policies that we are enacting and think about the long-term consequences rather than individual pieces of these different actions. Oh, 30 seconds. A holistic view is what we need. And in terms of additional development, you know, yes, we will increase our tax base, but that's just looking at the denominator. From a tax point of view, you also have to look at the numerator. And are we putting additional stress on our infrastructure? And how is that impacting the overall numbers in terms of tax?
Thank you. Mr. Finelli?
Yeah, I mean, in reality, there really has not been a lot of development in the village in the last 2 years. There were 6 houses that have been developed. 1 of them was from a fire. 5 of them, some of the smaller houses, have been renovated. A lot of the empty nesters are moving, correct. And who's going to move into a 3 or 4 bedroom home? Hopefully a family with some children that's going to make the neighborhood and make Larchmont what it is, a special place to raise a family. So the other thing that's happening is a lot of the people have done well in the stock market in the last couple of years. So they've gone from a smaller home to a bigger home, staying in the village and you know, moving to a nicer property. Beautiful. We're happy for them, and that's a success story that we all want to be around. But in terms of, you know, where we're going with development, there is not that much development. A lot of this is just hype, and not much has happened. And this, as the mayor stated earlier, there hasn't been a subdivision since 2000, and that's just something to think about. And, you know, life's going to happen. We're going to change slightly, but for the most part, we're not changing that much. We are keeping Larchmont, Larchmont. We all moved here because we love what we have. We love the way it feels. We love the way, you know, the town handles itself. It's what we love about Larchmont that keeps us coming back. So development really isn't an issue that we're making it an issue. We've placed 17 great laws last year. Sally, you were with us. Carol, we spent the summer getting these laws enacted, and we are ready to go. And I think the laws that have taken place are good ones. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question was submitted by Fran Snedeker. Okay. What are your ideas for initiatives which would help with Larchmont's downtown development and lack of affordable housing? And we're going to start with Ms. Bauer.
Thank you. With respect to the business district, I spent a lot of time talking to Tiffany Smith, who runs Love Larchmont and has been very involved with merchants and the Chamber of Commerce. One of the big issues with respect to business development, or one of the challenges that the merchants have identified, is lack of parking. And I think that is a key issue that needs to be addressed, and specifically in terms of, better utilization of the lots that we have, as well as finding alternative parking spaces for merchants, because it's many of the employees that are taking up shopper parking. So it's very hard to, find a space. It's actually my mother's biggest complaint. And in terms of, I apologize, what was the first part of the question?
Downtown development and lack of affordable
Lack of affordable housing. I think that is a big, big concern. And again, with the empty nesters leaving Larchmont, it puts additional pressure on our schools every time a young family comes in. And we need to very seriously find ways to incentivize our empty nesters to stay, make sure that there are affordable options for them to move into. And one way of exploring that as well is to create senior housing, over 50 living, things like that, in order to give them options so that they can stay in this community that they've loved, rather than be forced out.
Thank you. Mr. Finelli?
Yes, it's funny. Tonight I just came from a Chamber of Commerce meeting over at One River, where the Chamber has actually grown to 167 businesses. We've got 220 businesses in the village of Larchmont, both on Palmer and on Post. It's an exciting time to be a business person. They're excited about the Chamber. They're excited about the village. Is there a problem with the downtown in terms of not enough stores? It just seems that way, because the big stores that are empty, those are the big stores that are killing everything. But there are 220 stores in the village that are thriving. We went from 12% empty to 7% empty. We're slowly moving on. 17 new stores opened up in the village of Larchmont in the past 12 months. We're making progress. We're moving forward. These are things that you can see as you walk around the village. You'll feel the vibe. The storekeepers are happy. There's activity. Okay? Parking is an issue. There's no doubt about it. We've been on a study for quite a while. The board's been all over it with the mayor. Things are happening. Surveys are being done. We've met with the Palmer Avenue merchants and the Post Road merchants. They've both expressed different problems in different situations. Some have problems with the parking lots. Others have problem that the post office is able to park on the Post Road for as long as they can. We didn't know some of this stuff existed, so we're learning as well. The good thing is we're getting the feedback from the merchants, from the village residents, and we're getting a real handle on how to handle parking, not for today, but for the next 20 years. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Thank you. As you've heard, revitalizing the business district has been a top priority for the mayor and the board, and we've spent a lot of time over the past 2 years. And as Trustee Finelli has noted, the efforts have begun to pay off. The vacancy rate has dropped. The Larchmont Playhouse has been purchased and will reopen. We've had a variety of new stores and businesses moved into town. For an example, on the Post Road, we have One River and MF3, and the Chocolate Tree and the New Market, which is, by the way, is open till 8 o'clock every night on Palmer. One of the ways that we have brought in these new businesses, and a lot of credit goes to the mayor, is working individually with landlords and with prospective tenants to help ease the road into renting in the village. And we intend to keep on doing that, even though the amount of vacant space has gotten smaller and smaller. There are projects in the pipeline now. There's been a lot of interest expressed in the big vacant spaces in Palmer, and we feel very optimistic that Palmer's going to look a little different and a lot better in the near term. We also think the parking consultant is going to, as Sarah Bauer has talked about holistic approaches. That's what we're trying to do with the parking consultant, who's looking at the entire village, the lots, on-street parking, parking at the train station, so that the recommendations will address parking village-wide. And I think that'll be a major improvement and a big step for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 4 is from Michelle Faber. Given the frequency with which villagers lose power for extended periods of time because of trees or branches falling on overhead wires, can you explain why, given the many times the village has dug up the streets at curbside and even replaced the curbs, why haven't some of our increased tax dollars not been used to put those wires underground, at least in the business district, as Mamaroneck and New Rochelle have done? And we'll start with Mr. Finelli.
So the reason why the wires haven't been buried, and we talked about it extensively when we did the Palmer Avenue streetscape, is that it's $50,000 from pole to pole. That's the cost to the taxpayers. So the question became, was it worth it? Is that really where we want to spend our taxpayer dollars? The board at that time decided no. Now, in Mamaroneck, Con Edison was kind enough, because they had to move the poles out another foot, that they paid for that renovation. I don't think that cost the village anything for that renovation. So we talked about it, we looked at it, we opted not to. Now, some of the things that we did talk about is after Hurricane Sandy, because obviously we had a real issue here, I know I was out of power for 10 days, was that they had talked about breakaway wires so that the DPW could get at it quicker to once the wires were discharged, they could go and cut up the trees, and then it was an easy hook back up for the wire to go back to the main, which would then restore electricity. So that's what's happening with that in terms of electric and what was the other question part of that? I'm sorry. All electric.
Yeah, putting it
Okay.
underground.
So all electric. So one other thing about Palmer Avenue is that when we did the streetscape there, if you don't mind me saying, that we made sure that the lamp posts that were put in are 3,000 Kelvins. What does that mean? It's a warmer glow. So that when you walk the streets at night, there's sort of a nice, sexy feel, a little romantic feel to the village. The architect wanted to put in 4,000 Kelvins, which is sort of that ugly fluorescent light, which wasn't acceptable to us. I'm glad we fought him, we won, and I'm very proud of that fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Before I go to the answer to the question about the wires, I'd just like to add one more thing to my last question about the business district, which I should have mentioned in my first answer, which is, in order for the revitalization efforts in the downtown to work, we need to continue attracting young families to this area. We need those families and to be shopping in those stores and eating in those restaurants and patronizing those businesses. So I just want everybody to keep that in mind when we're talking about housing and what we're doing here. As far as the wires go, the one thing I would like to say is I'm sure the board is going to have another discussion about it after the recent events. I mean, Larchmont got hit incredibly hard. As the mayor said, having a small village with our own DPW was very helpful, as was the ability of the mayor, and in her absence, me briefly, to be able to communicate with individual residents and areas to give them heads up about what was happening with Con Ed. But there's no question that as these storms become more frequent and the damages become more severe, we're really going to have to look at whether this is the way we want to keep on going or whether there's something else we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer?
I think since the question was directed primarily to acting trustees as opposed to, I have not been part of decisions relating to Con Ed and the wires. I will say that going forward, however, it's probably worth looking at, but again, because our budget is so tight, that we have to be very careful about our revenue and our expenditures and not do anything that would raise taxes for the residents.
Thank you. The 5th question is a league question. Environmental issues continue to be important to our residents. What are the next steps Larchmont should take on the environment? And we'll start with you, Ms. Miller.
Well, we have I'm glad you asked that question. We have a very active environmental committee, and they're talking about all kinds of initiatives. One of the things we've looked at and they're trying to mount a campaign for is is minimizing or eliminating the use of the blowers that the gardeners tend to use. We've looked at eliminated plastic bags. We have an anti-idling law. There are all kinds of ways and things that we can do because we have such an active and committed community. We have one of the other initiatives that's recently been started is with the voluntary composting, which we have the bags and the little plastic composting bins in Village Hall. And as far as I know, that's gotten a very, very positive response. And with that, you can compost, you can put almost everything in the composting bin and then bring it to the Maxwell Avenue facility. So we are looking at issues relating to both waste and air quality and recycling. And I think those are the areas that we've been focusing on.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer?
Primarily, based on my conversations with members of the Parks and Trees Department, trees are obviously a very, very important of Larchmont. All of our streets are named after trees. One of the things that is most important is protecting the trees that we have. I think we need to seriously consider going further with the tree laws that we have enacted, doing more to protect trees on private property, because it also helps with flooding issues. There is an amazing amount of water that can be held in the roots of the tree systems, and every time we take down a tree, we exacerbate the flooding that we are all prone to within our village. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Finelli?
Yeah, for me, it's really all about the infrastructure. If we can get a handle on the infrastructure with the water leaks, the bad sewer lines, that's going to make a big impact on the environment, because every time we have to dig up a road or disturb the ground underneath, we're causing problems. We're causing pollution, there's noise complaints. It's not a good thing, but it needs to be done. The Coastal Zone Management Commission, which I'm the liaison on, works very hard and tirelessly on making sure that water runoff and the way water is treated from new construction goes in the right location, either via sun pump or the way it's distributed out to the sewers. And that's something that, we continue to work on a daily basis. The rules have changed. Everybody is extremely stringent, all of the boards, all of the volunteer commissions, about making sure that the environment is #1 priority. In the old days, it was let's get a house up and we'll deal with the consequences, later. Now it's all about let's do it one time, let's do it right. So I have to really thank all of the volunteer boards that are making strides in making sure that the residents, even though some people say it's a hassle to run through all these hoops, but in the long run, after a year is done, it's the right thing to do. And we'll continue to do the right thing at the right time in the right way. We will ask both sides of the question, because it's important that we know what's going on at all times. And as you know, we are Tree City USA, so we will continue to plant trees and protect our name, Larchmont, which is a tree. Thank you.
Thank you. The 6th question is a league question. What non-tax revenue sources do you suggest Larchmont should consider? And we'll start with Ms. Bauer.
I think the mayor actually touched upon quite a few. One of the great potential resources are having film crews come in and have to pay the fees associated with that. That is potential for generating quite a bit of revenue to help us close the gap between the revenue and the expenses that we're currently facing. I think the parking meters are also moving in a great direction in terms of generating revenue for the village. That has the potential to generate a significant amount of revenue to also help us close that gap. I think those would probably be my top 2.
Thank you. Mr. Finelli?
Yeah, I would have to say the film permit is a definite plus for us. We're pushing that forward. We've contacted production stage managers to let them know that we are open for business. And hopefully we continue that, and that's a great source of revenue. We rent out the fields in Flint Park for a substantial amount of money. That's a great revenue stream. The schools have it budgeted. I know it's our tax dollars. I get it. But nevertheless, it comes to the village and helps us to refurbish the carpet on the AstroTurf field, keep the parks green. That's an important factor. The parking meters will be a major revenue source for this village. Now, we like to talk about that, about not doing, we're going to put kiosks in. Okay, why kiosks? Because we don't want you to, every time you move your car to go pick up your dry cleaning on Palmer and get a sandwich on Chatsworth, to have to feed the meter. So we'll do a kiosk type thing, which will go from, you buy 2 hours, you can shop all around the village without any hassles. You're going to go spend a few bucks in a restaurant, what's another $1 or $2? We're looking into that seriously. In addition to the parking, there'll be an app for that. So if you're sitting in a restaurant, or as I was out putting up signs, the barber over here, Tony, told me, it takes more than 2 hours to dye your hair. Right? I said, I get it. He wants me to, you know, he wanted 3 hours on the meter. I said, okay, I understand what you're saying. I said, but there's going to be an app for that. Oh, apps, who needs an app? I said, this is where we're going with the village. This is the way we're thinking about parking. Okay? So we have a lot of great ideas down the pipeline. Stay with us. Pay attention, because the information is out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Well, we've covered a lot of this ground, obviously. Parking is, parking is way up there. Filling the remaining vacant storefronts and, rebuilding the building that came down that the Larchmont store was in. Those are all going to be sources of revenue. Another way, and it's not going to bring in doesn't bring in as much revenue, but it offsets some of the costs, is what we're trying to do in the Flint Park recreational facilities. Because now that we're starting to have, and this will be the first time we've had a spring tennis clinic, for example, in years, but people will pay to take clinics, and those fees, some of those fees will help offset the maintenance on the courts. Same with the paddle courts, and hopefully that we'll have enough interest in the paddle courts and enough revenue from those clinics to help refurbish the paddle courts, because paddle is becoming a very popular sport. Same with the Flint Park Playhouse, which is an incredible asset and has, an open deck and has been used at least once now for a private party. And it's got the potential also to be a source of some revenue. Again, not major revenue like parking, but enough revenue that if we do it right, can help offset some of the maintenance costs for those facilities. So that's another thing I would like to add.
Thank you. Our 7th question was submitted by Cheryl Hobson. What do you think are the most important issues facing our village today, and why? And we will start with Mr. Finelli.
For me, it's many things, but I'm going to just rattle off a couple things and I'll go back to them. Infrastructure. It is decaying. No one has wanted to handle infrastructure the way this board in the last 4 years, including you, Mayor Andrews, has addressed infrastructure. We took down 2 leaky water tanks and replaced it with 1 state-of-the-art concrete tank. And with that, we've also increased our water tank size by 150,000 gallons. That job came in on budget and on time. We replaced 2 pumps in the Byron pump station to get the water to move quicker. A lot of this was dying and was leaking. It needed to be helped. That's been done by this board, okay? Additionally, water meters were put into your houses. Some people are very happy, others not so much. Why? Because they've got in-ground sprinkler systems that didn't realize that the meter's running, right? So that's something that's been addressed. Additionally to that, water is a big deal. Infrastructure is a big deal. These are key points here. We've got cracked sewer pipes, we've got leaky water pipes. Infrastructure has to be addressed no matter what people want to do. And I know it's bothersome, but I will say this. We came up with a Con Edison plan so that when Con Ed decides they're going to dig a hole to fix something, we go in and we fix what we have broken as well. We check the water pipes, we check the connections, and that works out really well together. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Well, I agree with Trustee Finelli that infrastructure is a huge issue, but it really is a reflection of another issue, which is in a village this size of 6,000 people with most of its revenue coming from property taxes, how can we manage to go forward, sustain the level of service that we have, refresh our infrastructure so that we're not constantly plugging holes, but rather we're in a position where we can, do it all in one fell swoop and move forward, and provide all the services that the residents have become accustomed to. So One of the issues is, in addition to the revenue, is looking at ways to share services, I think, and cut costs for some of these things that everybody wants to preserve, and I totally agree, and I totally get it, because we have some of the most impressive, police and fire departments that I've ever seen. But, we have to start looking at ways, like we do with joint sanitation, to share services with our neighbors, too. Because, again, there's a certain amount of revenue we can raise, but also at a certain point, we have to start figuring out how we can cut back on the expenses that we face and still maintain our infrastructure, which, no matter what we do, these costs we're going to incur year after year after year.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer?
I actually have two issues. The first is obviously our taxes, and as we've all discussed, we need to look at alternatives for revenues, and we have to very carefully look at the expenses and make sure that there is no waste there. But in addition to that, the quality of our schools is really a huge, huge issue. If the quality of our schools goes down, our property values go down. And we really need to develop a better line of communication between Mamaroneck, between Larchmont, and between the schools to understand the underlying issues, because the school board has cited the empty nesters leaving and the overdevelopment as issues putting pressure on the schools. So we need to really coordinate. And I think one of the things that we really need to think about and we need to coordinate with Mamaroneck on are things like developers' fees, so that if we have to build a new school building, if we have to pay for busing, that isn't getting passed on to the taxpayers, that there are other sources of revenue coming in order to help offset, so that it's not just our burden, particularly when you have for-profit developers coming in. Their goal is to maximize their profits. They have different interests than we do, and they maximize their profits and they leave, and we are left with the cost. And, for example, if Vanderburg ends up happening with those 3 houses as they get built, that's 9 new potential children in our school district in Chatsworth, where 1 child is the difference between 5 classes and 6 classes. And that really creates a lot of stress on the schools, and that, I think, really needs to be our focus.
Thank you. Our last question is from the League. We already share some services with other communities. What other opportunities would you suggest? And we'll start with Ms. Miller.
Well, as we were just discussing, we are going to have to continue to look at ways. Joint sanitation is a good model to start off. We have a joint coastal zone management commission. We are the composting program is a joint program. In fact, for the fire department, for example, there's an intermunicipal agreement so that the fire departments coordinate services every time when there's an emergency. I think we need to, continue to look at other ways we can do this. We can share services. I would like to say, in response to go back to the prior question, though, for a minute, we do have very good communication with the school district. The mayor meets on a regular basis with school officials, and the communities collectively do discuss development coming down the road, the particular concerns of the residents of each municipality, and where it's going to impact us. I think our role, and I think we do it, is to urge the school district to consider and do the proper planning for the changes that are coming down the road. Our role is not, and it's not going to be to the benefit of our village, to keep out young children and keep out young families. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bauer.
I feel that we share a lot of expenses with Mamaroneck, and we have to look at the budget and look at different options. However, one of the wonderful things about Larchmont is that we are our own separate village, and we don't want to lose that. So we have to be very careful in what we consider and what we think about. And then in answer to Ms. Miller's point on the communication between the schools, yes, the schools absolutely have to plan, and I don't think the goal at all, and at least with respect to developers' fees, is to keep out children from our school district, but to make sure that developers aren't maximizing their profit and leaving taxpayers with the burden. That burden needs to be shifted and it needs to be shared. and it shouldn't just be placed on the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Finelli?
Yeah, I mean, shared services has been an ongoing question for the last 20 years. We are all on our own island, and you particularly notice that and need that when you have a crisis, say Sandy and the hurricane and the nor'easters from last week. Everybody was busy taking care of their own residents. So shared services is wonderful, and we have mutual aid when there's a big fire. When my pager goes off, I'm the fire commissioner in the village of Larchmont, and it's a code 20, it's code 75. That's an active fire. All volunteers, no matter what time, get up and go to the fire and do the best that we can to save the lives and property of the residents. The ambulance district, that's another shared service that we have. The town of Mamaroneck and the village of Larchmont, the volunteer ambulance corps, services both of us. They service us well. They just bought a new ambulance, beautiful rig. As the ambulance commissioner, I went over there and looked at their new stuff, and they're very proud of themselves. And they rightfully should be. Training is a big deal. They train day in and day out. Our volunteer firefighters train day in and day out. The library, another shared service. That's a big one, because that's a big budget. It affects everyone. We're all very proud of our library. I think our children's library is one of the best children's library in the country. I think that the library itself is top 5 in Westchester County. Sanitation trucks, all of that. We've come together on that. The town of Mamaroneck and the village of Larchmont fix their trucks in-house, which means it's down at the Maxwell Yard. We saved thousands of dollars by making that move. That was a great move. It worked out. It keeps all the drivers knowing what's going on. It keeps the DPW or the sanitation department satisfied, and it's another smart move that the village is making to save the taxpayers' dollars. I've been turned off there.
Thank you. That's the end of the questions. I want to thank the audience for their questions. I also want to thank the three of you because you were incredibly respectful of the time limit, and I didn't have to use my gavel once, so that was wonderful. So now
Very obedient.
we'll move on to the closing statements, and we're going to go in the same order that we did at the beginning. So we will start with Ms. Bauer.
I want to thank Bubba, Carol, and our moderator for taking the time to participate this evening. Simply put, I see this election as a referendum on the public policies our village officials have adopted and will adopt. This election offers you the opportunity to weigh in on the direction of our village and on matters that are important to our residents: overdevelopment, how we work with our schools, housing values, and our taxes. Your vote will be a loud and clear signal to the board. This election is about the future of our village. We need a holistic approach to our policies. We need to consider how higher taxes will affect the success of our village going forward. We need to come up with creative ways to encourage empty nesters to remain, and we need to put real limits on overdevelopment and its impact on our schools and our infrastructure. If elected, I will encourage our village to be more proactive and not reactive to these other challenges. I will push to close the loopholes that are already being forced open in our land use laws. I will push for comprehensive and coordinated thinking to face the crisis of overpopulation in our schools, and I will push for better communication with both residents and between local government and our schools, and I will advocate for fiscally responsible budgets that minimize the tax burden for residents. I have 2 children in the school district, and I am in touch with the issues that parents are facing today. Preserving the character and quality of our village demands creative and coordinated thinking. Maintaining the status quo is not enough, and I am committed to getting off the sidelines and standing up for our village and its future, and I know that I am not alone. I respectfully request your vote on March 20th and promise, if elected, I will work tirelessly with the board to galvanize our community.
Thank you, Ms. Bauer.
Thank you.
Mr. Finelli?
I have many things still to accomplish in my next term. Fire trucks need to be spec'd out and purchased. Enrollment in the volunteer fire department must be increased for the safety of our residents and is one of my highest priorities. Parking issues need to be addressed both in the lots and the streets. Keeping our taxes in check is a high priority for me and the board. The Village Historic Preservation Task Force, this is a new organization, is underway with great preservation ideas. Site plans are a must and for all tear downs before they get demolished. Our new local law number 21-2016 states that. That is the law. Police garage is something that must be addressed and reviewed. Infrastructure must be kept on top of daily. We will continue to provide the excellent services that already exist with sanitation, the DPW, police, fire, and ambulance. I love to serve this village. I truly enjoy my time on the board. I am here at the pleasure of the residents. I look forward to serving another 2 years. I'm asking for your vote. You like that, huh? It's a little bit of theatrics. I'm in the theater business. But the voting center behind the library is the place to go. Election day is March 20th. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for the opportunity to meet with the candidates, especially Alice Pernick and Deb Morale and their team, as well as LMC-TV for continued broadcasting of matters that affect our community. Let's keep Larchmont, Larchmont, a quiet village on Long Island Sound with great schools, beautiful homes, and giving residents. Thank you for your time tonight. Remember, get involved, stay involved. Volunteering is what makes this community great. God bless America and the village of Larchmont. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Finelli. Ms. Miller.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters for giving us this opportunity, and thank you, the audience, for being here and participating. I think you've heard different visions of Larchmont discussed here tonight. My vision is a progressive one. I see many issues facing our village today, and I want to move forward to address them, not backwards. We may not have all come to Larchmont for the same reasons. Some of us were drawn here because of the short commute to the city. Some may have been attracted by the fact that we can walk almost everywhere. One thing, though, that I think we can all agree on is that Larchmont is a very special place to live and raise a family, and we all want to keep it that way. What exactly makes it special, though? For me, it's the sense of community developed through shared experiences on committees, on ball fields, on bike paths, and events like the Ragamuffin Parade and the Sprint to Flint. Our job as trustees is to nurture this core of the Larchmont experience, this intangible part of what got us here and kept us here in the first place. This is the Larchmont that I want to preserve. Our job is also to continue to keep Larchmont an attractive and welcoming place for young families. We need those families to shop in our stores and eat in our restaurants and to serve on our committees. In other words, while we assess how the zoning code changes are working in practice, we want to assure that we regulate development responsibly, not to keep people out, but to make sure people still want to come in. I feel strongly that particularly now, we need to emphasize our democratic principles. We must just to finish that sentence, I think it's critically important for us to recognize that communities, including ours, inevitably evolve, and progress is a good thing. Thank you very much, and remember to vote on March 20th.
Thank you all. That concludes the debate. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, candidates, and thank you, Deb Morel. I just want to say one more thing, and I will be remiss if I did not remind everybody there is another important election coming up on April 24th to fill the state Senate seat that was vacated by George Latimer. That will be the Republican candidate Julie Killian versus the Democratic candidate Shelley Mayer. The New Rochelle League of Women Voters is going to be hosting a debate for that, and our Larchmont Merrimack League will be co-sponsoring it. There's going to be, it will be taped, and there will be a link if anybody wants to watch it. When we get it, we'll put it up on our website or on Facebook. So if you want to check it out and get informed, and most importantly, come out and vote on April 24th. Thanks, everybody, for a very informative evening.
Thank you.
My initial opening statement was like 2 pages.